Starry Night is a painting by my favourite artist of all time, Vincent van Gogh. He's my favourite artist for the same reason that my favourite actors and directors occupy that spot. The story of the art they produce. Van Gogh was a man haunted by his mental illnesses. Sudden rage, sadness and hopelessness would leave him bedridden for days, and then he would quietly return to producing work that would come to be revered as some of the most significant of all time. He was someone who channeled the pain, the heartache and the devastating feelings of loneliness and depression into his work. He lived a life that at times was hellish, but instead of reflecting this in his artwork, he turned his agony into fantastic expressions of the beauty of life and the world around him. He wasn't just one of the greatest painters the world has ever seen, but also one of the greatest human beings to ever live, and the most famous example of the relationship between mental health and artistry. Hello, welcome to my first ever Spotlight video. This is a series in which every so often I'll look at some of my favourite creators in the movie TV industry. This episode is about the man who inspired the series because I couldn't let another week go by without talking about him. Inside was what triggered this thought process, but I also wanted the video itself to be about Bo as a person and as a creator. As those of you who watch my videos know, I like to approach things from a certain angle, so this won't be a comprehensive overview of Inside, nor a complete history of Bo. There are already a lot of those out there done to a very high standard. I want to talk about why Bo makes what he makes. Bo Burnham is a comedian, writer, producer, director, lyricist, and a bunch of other things. You might know him from his stand-up specials, a YouTube video, or his debut film 8th Grade, which received rave reviews from critics and audiences alike. I decided to make this video after watching Bo's newest special Inside 5 times in 48 hours because it captivated me and nested itself so deep within my brain that I couldn't not rewatch it over and over again. At the time of recording this, I'm not sure how many times I've seen it, and I'm still seeing new aspects of it. I also went back and rewatched his 3 previous specials for like the 10th time each, and began to understand and relate to him more than I had ever done before. I think Inside is something that we can all relate to in one way or another, as it was written, shot and edited entirely by Bo within one room over the course of a year during the pandemic. But I think it hit the content creators amongst us a lot harder, because just speaking for myself, I can recognise the stages that Bo goes through as he shows us his creativity, as well as offering a look into his process as the special also becomes a making of video. The special itself is Bo's greatest work so far. When he went from performing comedy to making a movie, I said to a friend that at some point he'll combine the two, and I'm happy that I was right because Inside is a comedy special with the production of an indie film from the gifted mind of a truly special writer and director.
It's 2020 and I'm 30, I'll do another 10, 20, 30, I'll be 40 and kill myself then.
I can't emphasise enough that this was shot in one room, and the skill involved in keeping us engaged and keeping it fresh so that we don't get bored of seeing the same location for 90 minutes is off the charts. The songs and skits themselves feel relevant and timely because they were written during this shared, tragic experience, with references to things we all recognise, but they also feel like they'll remain that way long after the pandemic is a distant memory. As usual, the creativity and execution is brilliant, with some bits leaving you wondering exactly how long it took to plan and execute it all properly. Sometimes I'll watch the video for White Woman's Instagram and think about how I would go about planning and executing it, until I eventually decide I don't have the ability nor the patience to do so. In fact, I'm going to use this one song to talk about something that is very much part of the Bo Burnham brand.
A white woman's Instagram.
On its surface, White Woman's Instagram might simply be put into the category of haha woman bad, due to the fact that it is literally a song parodying the aesthetics and content of a typical white woman's Instagram page. But the true message, in classic Bo style, is always buried 5 layers deeper than that, and when you start digging, you eventually get to the juicy truth at the centre of his lyrical lollipop, which is that the song is about the hypocrisy and danger of performative activism, which is most prevalent among white women, slotting together with comedy and how the world works to complete the White Knight trilogy of songs in this special. The imagery and the lyrics all allude to this, as Bo shows us how Native American symbols are used as fashion accessories by the same people who share political street art, how they want to join in with politics by tweeting an MLK quote while not being bothered enough to check if it's correct. It's an attack on being political for show and for clout and followers, but as we've seen before, Bo manages to do it in a way that isn't hurtful or vindictive. It's more like holding up a mirror to highlight the problem. I don't think anyone walks away from a Bo Burnham song feeling attacked, but they might walk away feeling like he's shown them something about themselves they aren't happy with. The best illustration of the message of this song for me is purveyed through the camera work. Once the chorus kicks in, we're shown the usual aspect ratio for photos taken on a phone. The same ratio they would be on Instagram.
Is this heaven? Or is it just a white woman?
All of the fake emotions, the posed photos, and the filtered feelings get presented in this view. But there's one time in the video when it changes. During the verse in which the character talks about her deceased mum. Here the aspect ratio reacts to the lyrics in real time. For the first 1.5 lines, it stays in that narrow view.
Her favorite photo of her mom. The caption says, I can't believe it. It's been a decade since you've been gone.
Then in the middle of her saying, it's been a decade since you've been gone, it starts to change. In the midst of making the annual post about her mom, real emotions have kicked in. What she's feeling now isn't just for show.
My own apartment, mama, I got a boyfriend and I'm crazy about him. Your little girl didn't do too bad.
Until she suppresses them so that she can use the caption to brag about everything she's done, disguised as a message to her mum. It's the little things like this that are present in every single song and every single video that make every rewatch of Inside a chance to discover something you hadn't noticed before. This brings me to the main thing I want to talk about here, and it's Bo himself. Because he has done shows for quite some time now, you can go and watch each one and see him evolve as a human being, and to me, Bo Burnham is up there with the comedic geniuses that only come around maybe once in a generation. And that's not a compliment I throw out there at random. There is no one alive right now who I think can rival him in terms of sheer creative talent, understanding of comedy, and the human mind. I'd feel comfortable putting him up there with the likes of George Carlin and Richard Pryor. To be a truly great comedian, you have to be original. You have to be creative, and you have to push boundaries. You also have to make people think. The best comedians for me are often the smartest people in the room. Like my favourite films, Bo Burnham's comedy is complex and layered, like an ogre. To explain why would sound like the ramblings of an insane person, but Bo knows this too. He explicitly states that he has a need to make everything, including his songs, deep and metaphorical and complex. He also calls himself out for that in those very same songs, while acknowledging that it's both necessary to be self-aware and that being self-aware doesn't negate what you're aware of.
Working class jobs, but not a lot. What it's about. I'm being a little pretentious. It's an instinct I have where I need everything that I write to have some deeper meaning or something. But it's a stupid song, and it doesn't really mean anything. And it's pretty unlikable that I feel this need, this desperate need, to be seen as intelligent and.
Bo's comedy is a reflection of humanity at this point in time, and each song deals with one or more of the issues we are currently facing as individuals or as a species. Whether it's the pressures of being a content creator, the mindlessness of being a content consumer, how kids are systematically lied to, how worshipping billionaires is a new norm, or simply the incredibly relatable difficulties of trying to FaceTime with your mum, or mom, as you Americans say. The best art makes you think, and this is the genius of Bo Burnham. Every time I watch one of his shows, I come away thinking. I come away inspired or with a purpose or a better understanding of myself or others. I also laugh a lot. In fact, there are only 2 people who have managed to make me literally laugh out loud and then cry a few seconds later, and one of them is Bo. For those of you wondering, the other one is Ricky Gervais in both Derek and Afterlife. That is a skill that blows my mind. I think the mark of a truly great creator is vulnerability. Whether you're painting a portrait, shooting a movie, performing comedy, or singing a song, you have to create emotions, and you do that by giving your audience a piece of yourself and letting them into your world. The best bits of Bo Burnham's comedy specials, ironically enough, are when you see the man behind the jokes, because everything else then has context, a story, and more meaning than it would if it was told by your mate or a stranger on the street.
I am not well.
A big part of Bo's commentary on himself and of the world centres around mental health. Inside, a title which also has a double meaning as you'd expect from Bo, gives us the biggest look yet into the psyche of the man who spends a majority of his time trying to make other people happy. You can see the stages of depression and loneliness and trying to balance that with the need to create and be funny while questioning why and how and if it's even appropriate or needed. As I mentioned before, this is the typical life of a creator. Just speaking from my own perspective, whatever is going on in your life at that time has to wait, because once that microphone goes live and that camera turns on, you are your creative persona, here to entertain, amuse, and feed the audience. Daddy made you some content, so open wide and consume. We see what happens immediately before and after the takes. This is why I, in particular, related so much to this special, because after I record this, I'm also going to turn off my mic, breathe a big sigh, let the energy fade from my body, and get to work on the behind-the-scenes slog that you don't see, in which I sit looking disappointed at a screen for hours as I try to mould what I've created into something semi-watchable, and then post it thinking it's both brilliant and shit, and then wait for the shots of dopamine that keep me going. We all live double lives to an extent, and I think very bravely Bo is showing us himself transforming from the happy, peppy clown that fans expect him to be, to the critical, depressed, slightly self-loathing man that he is in private. And that change is instant. As soon as the song finishes, we see him revert back, and it's almost as if we're not seeing the same man anymore. Like seeing a Spider-Man impersonator leave a children's birthday party and light up a cigarette. There was one shot that summed it up for me, and it's this one. Bo watching back the video he'd just completed for one of my favourite songs in the whole thing that made me laugh so much that I rewound it to watch it back, and he's sat there in the dark watching it coldly, analytically, and looking slightly unimpressed. It's the relationship between art and artist that many people don't get to see. Now, we're getting towards the end of the video, and my regular viewers are probably sat there thinking, okay, this is when Gage busts out the sad music, puts things in slow-mo and black and white and makes us cry. And yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. 4 years ago, we lost one of my favourite ever musicians, Chester Bennington, to suicide. I remember what I was doing when I found out. I remember crying. I remember grieving for a man I'd never met, but who had provided me with the soundtrack to almost my entire life up to that point. The thing I think about most today whenever I listen to Linkin Park, as I still do a hell of a lot, is how so many of the songs, especially from their last album, feel like a cry for help that we all ignored. Mental illness can strike anyone at any time, no matter how rich or famous or happy they seem on the outside. When Chester died, we all said that we never saw it coming, but looking back, maybe we should have. Those songs now scream of a tortured man looking for help. Much like Chester and the man I mentioned at the start of this video, Vincent van Gogh, Bo's creativity and his mental health have always been intertwined, and that is especially apparent in Inside, culminating in him literally breaking down in tears after admitting he is unwell. I don't know what the point of me saying any of this is, because I doubt Bo will ever see it, and it's not like anyone watching can just text him to check up on him, and I'm hoping that he has the support he needs and is feeling better than what we saw. But what we can do is to check on our own friends and family, ask them how they're doing, see if they need anything, let them know you're there. Inside reminds me of Chester every time I see it now, because they are two people letting the world know that they are not okay through the art that they make. A cry for help that echoes those from creative minds throughout history. It seems that creativity and mental health issues so often go hand in hand, and that harnessing one to fuel the other is both fruitful and dangerous. A relationship between mental health and artistry that has existed for as long as we can document. My hope is that Bo himself and others who watched Inside will be able to cope better having seen it, and know that the person you see on camera or on stage isn't the same person that they are when they're alone. One of the running jokes in Bo's comedy is that telling jokes isn't going to save the world, but at the same time it has a profound impact, and I think Inside sums that up perfectly. I believe Bo does what he does for the same reason that Van Gogh painted his paintings, despite not earning a penny from all but one of them. For the love of what you're doing, the desire to express yourself, the knowledge that you have something to share with the world, and the hope that you can make others happy and make a difference by simply sharing your view of the world with them. Inside isn't just a brilliantly creative and funny performance from a comedy genius. It's a much needed and deeply vulnerable look behind the curtain of the creative process, and a glimpse into the mind of an amazing man who, in his own words, gives the world what he cannot give himself. Jesus, that was a tough one.